here with my co-host Kayleigh and Emily Campagno, and also joining us today, host of Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Kennedy herself, and retired in Kennedy. I come to you first for your thoughts.
It's nice to be back with you all. This is very, very trying, not only for these families, and those are the first people that I think about. He's the Secretary of State. But also, you know, I don't have a great deal of...
And cannot be in power. White House official had to clean that up. One thing if it's a minor...
China. To meet with President Xi.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, that's coming up. We'll cover it stem to stern. Your thoughts on what we were just learning from Trey Yingst. And by the way, Vivek Ramaswamy, GOP presidential candidate, told me last hour he could see why we wouldn't necessarily want to hit too close to Iran as our bases are being attacked by Iranian... Look at that.
Yeah, so, I mean, let's take a step back and look at this. What did they gain? So, who gains? Iran.
Emily.
Yeah, Kayleigh, it's so interesting, you know, when you brought up the Wagner Group, you're absolutely right. And another reason that I don't personally trust him is in part because after the Afghanistan botched pullout, he told us that there were 100 to 100 professionals have finally made it out after we covered extensively the fact that no one was getting through that gate. Americans left behind because, as Kirby himself says, he knows it will, quote, take some time. I don't know how much time we have.
Yeah. Well, you bring up Qatar and
statement that they put out right after the
vanishing red lines, but that's one that's got to go because there's a lot of trouble on these campuses. We've all seen it. We got to get over that.
Looks like we need 21 Jump Street. But to be all in all...
I mean, you know I'm a sucker for Johnny Depp and Richard Grieco.
That's right.
And I appreciate the reference.
That's right. Yesterday in town here, kind of drive through unfettered throughout the streets of New York, and you contrast that with the New York Times, for example, calling people that are pulling down the kidnapped by Hamas posters as a form of protest. And now the White House comes out with...
That's what they want. They're not holding back. It is so incredibly dangerous. So I'm glad that those trustees and I'm glad that those donors to these big schools who have sat by for decades are finally sitting up going, where are my millions going to?
And Bushnell, which is located in Oregon, Florida International University, HBCUs that are also on this list. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And it's pretty amazing. They're going to look at places where they really want their kids to grow up further, where their values are furthered.
ASU is a great school.
I want to have that one come in.
What's that? I was just going to say that the opposition that Kennedy is talking about is well-funded and well-organized. Where's the money?
Would come across, and that there were some concerns about people coming from there for the first time. They're starting flights back to
area was because they refused to cooperate with the feds. So when these sanctuary cities,
you know, this is going hand in hand. They don't have the resources to
or vetted.
Math has caught up with them and bitten them in the keister. They are no longer able.
Yeah, that's a great question. Look, Emily's, I mean, you nailed it.
A good rule of thumb, if Hamas puts babies in ovens, they should not be trusted. They should not be trusted.
And the Democrat guest that you saw right there obviously had a point of view. Everybody on the panel did. It was interesting to see him in that. You can tell this far into. We're going to do some more of these. We've been doing Voters' Voices since we did it live on election night last year or 2 years ago now. And we let
him today in front of the voters. What struck you about him? What has changed, if anything? What has developed, if anything, about himself as a candidate?
You know, I